We now have a demonstration here of showing how to use the array list. We're going to actually construct two separate array lists. One is going to be an array list of cities, that is strings representing names of cities, and the other one is going to be an array list of circles from what we borrowed before, the code we wrote to represent a circle. I've got all the code typed in for us already, so we're just going to talk about each statement in the code and then actually run the demo and show you what happens when you run it. So this program is called test array list, and the first thing pertinent to the slide we were just looking at a moment ago is our declaration of an array list of strings. This is borrowed right from that slide we saw just a little while ago, except the name is different. We've picked the name city list instead of cities, but that's okay, it's just a name. But it's still an array of strings, an array list of strings in either case. We're using the add method to add cities to it. So we say city list, that is the name of our object representing this array list, and dot add for the add method, and then a quoted literal string in parentheses. So this is going to add the string London as our first element in our array list. Likewise, we do the same with Denver, Paris, Miami, Seoul, and Tokyo. And at this point, if we count the number of strings that we've inserted into our array using the add method, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what should happen when we execute this statement here and ask about the size of our city list, we should get a 6. So this should print list size question mark and then the number 6. And the next line, we ask if Miami is in the list, and we use the contains method to see if it is or not. So this is something new that you haven't seen before with regular arrays. We can actually query the entire city list and see if somewhere in there is contained the element that matches the argument here, Miami. So this is going to return a Boolean, either true or false. If Miami is in the list, it'll print false at this point. If it is in the list, it'll print true. So we should see in this case, since Miami clearly right up here is in the list, then what output should be generated by the statement you see here should simply be, is Miami in the list, question mark, space, true is what should print, because it is. On the next line, we ask about where Denver is located within the list. In other words, what index is it stored at? And remember, indices are still going to start at 0 like they do for normal arrays. So if we go back here and count, well, London was the first item, so that would have been at index 0. Denver must be then at index 1. So what we should see for output generated here is the location of Denver in the list, question mark, and then it should print the number 1, indicating that it's at index 1 in the list. Continuing on, we check out the Boolean function or method is empty. We say, is the list empty? And then we're either going to print true or false. And we're going to use the is empty method with our object city list. And if the list is empty, we'll get a true. If it's false, if it's not empty, which we know it isn't, then of course we're going to print false there. So that's what we should see as output. Is the list empty? False. Then we begin to manipulate our list, because remember, a list array is mutable. We can make changes to it. So the first thing we do is we add a new city at index 2. Note that this is clearly an add method. It's not going to overwrite whatever city stored there at index 2. And in fact, at index 2, let's just scroll back and see what's there. So we had London at 0, Denver at 1, Paris was at index 2. What will happen when we add this Chinese city at index 2 is Paris will have to move over to index 3 to make room for it, and Seoul will have to move from index 3 to 4, and Tokyo will have to move from index 4 to 5. So everything's going to shift down one place as a result of this. I think I had those indexes slightly wrong, because we should have index 0 through 6 by the time we're finished. But the point is that the one city that we're inserting at index 2 is going to move down, move everything else down by one spot. So Paris goes from 2 to 3, Miami from 3 to 4, Seoul from 4 to 5, Tokyo from 5 to 6. So we now have indices 0 through 6, which are 7 cities total in the list, and that now makes sense. So the list should look like what we see here, and you can see that obviously Paris, which used to be where this city is, has moved down one spot, and everything else moved down one place with it. And now we have a new city at index 2 as a result of that add. We then do a remove a city from the list, so we say citylist.remove Miami. So Miami is located right here. What will happen is it will vanish, but Seoul will move back one spot to fill its spot, and Tokyo will move back to fill the spot that Seoul was at. And that's how we think should turn out, is the way you see them here. Then we do a remove city at index 1. So here we removed a particular element. So what happens is we search the list for that element and we remove it wherever it be from the list. Here we're doing an index remove. So we're saying remove whatever's at index 1. At this point, Denver is at index 1. So Denver here will be removed, leaving us with the list that you see here. And then finally, after all is said and done, we display the final list. So we aren't going to see these individual results because we didn't ask for them. We didn't do any system out print lines there. But after we've finished all those manipulations, we're going to do a final system out print line of citylist.toString. So there's a toString method associated with this, and the toString method in ArrayList is designed to print an opening square bracket, to list the values, effectively do a toString on each individual element within the list, and to delimit each of those by using comma blank, and then at the end to throw a closing square bracket on the whole thing. So you get all this for free when you do a toString on something that's been declared to be an element of an array list. We then are going to display the contents of the list in reverse order by having a for loop that counts backwards, starting at 1 less than the size of the list, because remember, indices in array are always from 0 to 1 less than the size of the array. So we start 1 less than the size of the array. We're going to bump I downwards at every iteration, and we're going to keep going as long as I is greater than or equal to 0. As soon as it becomes negative, we're going to stop. So in other words, if there are at this point a total of 4 cities in the list, which there should be, because, or sorry, there'll be 5 at this point, then what will happen is this for loop is going to start at 4 and go 3, 2, 1, 0. And it'll effectively then print the cities backwards. We're using the get with an argument, so get at index I, or get the item at index I in the array list. So we're going to do a citylist.get5 and print that out with a blank following it, and then citylist get 4 and do that, and then 3 and 2 and 1 and 0, and we'll print out the list in reverse. So instead of seeing London, then this, and then this, and then this, it'll be Tokyo, Seoul, Paris, backwards all the way to London. So after we're finished all that, we're going to print a new line character just so the cursor goes back in the home position and isn't parked at the end of the line. So in preparation for the next stuff that we print down here. What do we print down here? Well, this is sort of the grand finale here. We just finished creating a list of an array list of strings. Now we're going to create an array list of circles. So we put in where the generic type goes, the object circle class. And then we say array list circle list equals new array list. And again, we can leave this blank because the compiler will infer that it must be a circle because it was over here. And then we begin to add 2 circles to our what is now an empty list. So we do a list.add and we create a new circle. I'm just going to mention as a slight aside, just go off in a little bit of a tangent for a moment, because this is going to happen time and time again as we go through the material in this course, that what you're seeing here is an anonymous object, right? Because we didn't give it a name. We simply said nothing. We don't normally put a name and say that name equals new circle 2, but we don't have anything here, so it's like we're saying nothing new circle 2. So we do get an object of class circle. In fact, it's a circle with radius 2, as you can see here, but we haven't given it a name. Therefore, it's called an anonymous object. So in other words, the argument here is an anonymous object. And likewise, this is an anonymous object as well. So we're going to see this happen time and time again, where because of what we're doing, we don't need to give it a name. We're never going to use it again, so we don't need to refer to it, and therefore it doesn't need a name. And we'll take this strategy of creating an anonymous object in such cases. So the next thing we do is we have these two circles stored in our list, and we simply query the area of the one at index 0. That's the one that had radius 2. So we print a message that says the area of the circle, and then we follow that with list.getZero, and that right there returns an object of class circle. And now, because getArea is a method of circle, we can then say this dot get area, and that will report the area of that particular circle. So what we should get there is 2 squared, which is 4 times pi, because the area of a circle is pi r squared, and that'll be something like around 12. A little bit more than 12 is what we should see. That then completes a discussion of the code that we're now about to demonstrate, and we're going to see it actually run now. So I'm going to click on run, and you can see that it has run, and everything I said has come true. List size was 6 as promised. Miami, it's true that it's in the list. Location of Denver was at index 1. It's false that the list is empty. After making some modifications to the list, adding and subtracting cities, we finally have a final list that looks like this. And then we print in reverse order. So as you can see, this starts at London, ends at Tokyo, but we print Tokyo all the way to London in reverse order. And finally, the area of the circle is indeed slightly more than 12 as promised. So the demo does work, and we've now illustrated using the ArrayList class with both strings and with circles, and we can do whatever we want with any kind of objects using this particular new array list that we've learned about here.